You have to look at also what your enemy respects. And if your enemy respects only strength, they're not going to be moved by your apologies or your willingness to sort of sing kumbaya together. They're not impressed by that. Bin Laden, as much as I hate to give him credit for this, but his comment that people naturally gravitate toward the strong horse is exactly right. We need to show strength, not self-abasement or any kind of cultural self-doubt. We're up against a culture of Islamic fundamentalism that has zero self-doubt. They have zero cultural self-doubt. They don't waste any time in apologetic self-abasement. They have no historical guilt. And that's why they are ascendant. And America is, in their eyes, just the falling camel.
So how do we, what do we do with that? I mean, is this a political movement? Is this a cultural movement? Is this screw you, we're going to show Seth Rogen's movie? What is it?
Well, it's a big, that's a big question, and it's something that's got to be dealt with on a number of fronts. You said political and cultural, and yes, it has to be those things. It has to be military. But I think at the heart of it is we first have to get back in touch with our cultural pride, and that is something that has been drummed out of us through decades of politically correct indoctrination. And that is going to be very, very difficult to overturn. But that's where it begins, is throwing off the chains of political correctness. As a culture, we need to take pride in what the West has accomplished and in Western values instead of apologizing for them. And we need to take pride in our history, pride in our accomplishments, and assert those values and assert that pride in the face of enemies within and without who want to destroy us. So I think that's
right.
The first step is learning and teaching teaching our youth to break through the chains of political correctness. I think that's where it all really has to start. It has to start in the culture, and then it will emanate from there through the political realm. And but it's a complicated and long uphill battle, but we've got to get started.
Listen, just one more comment here, and then in the essence of time, we've got to move to your Chris Rock article. But Mark, you're exactly right. I mean, I've called it for a long time the toothpaste out of the tube syndrome, if you will. This degradation of American culture, American society, the view of America and its military, and all of the above, degradation by the left. It is a long process. I mean, it may be generational. I don't know. But this toothpaste has been coming out of the tube for a long time, hasn't it? And it's going to be awfully difficult to put back, even if it can be put back.
Exactly right. As I said, it's going to be an uphill battle. And as you said, it may be generational. So things may get worse before they get better. But if we don't do something about it now, if we don't refuse to accept just a sort of a business-as-usual attitude, if we don't shake that off now, it will be too late. There will be no going back.
You're exactly right. Hey, let's talk about your Chris Rock article. You put this up earlier this month. I love it. Tell us about it.
Chris Rock said in an interview recently something very interesting. The interviewer asked him what he thought about the controversy surrounding Bill Maher being disinvited as UC Berkeley commencement speaker, which took place back in October. And Chris Rock said something along the lines of, I love Bill Maher, but, I stopped playing the college circuit. I stopped doing the college tour thing, and the reason is because colleges now are too conservative. And the interviewer was a little taken aback and said, politically conservative? And Chris Rock said, no, it's not like they're voting Republican, but just in their social attitudes and their willingness not to offend anybody. In other words, he's talking about not so much about being conservative as being politically correct. And Chris Rock, who's a lot of his comedy depends on offending people. He said it's no fun anymore to go do the college tour, the college circuit. People don't they simply don't want to be offended. They don't want as he put it, kids have been raised on a culture of we're not going to keep score in a game anymore because we don't want any losers. We want only winners. Or you can't even refer to someone as a black kid. You have to refer to him as a guy with the red shoes on. It's just taken such a deep hold in the mindset of college students now that it's no fun for Chris Rock to try to do a comedy show at a college, and I think that says a lot about about political correctness on campus, and that's something that we've all been well aware of. But
listen, and Chris Rock is completely correct. And for the record, and it makes no difference. Nobody cares what I think anyway. But I think Chris Rock is hilarious, and I would call him an equal offender. If you've not, and you and a third party, whomever, if you've not seen an unfiltered Chris Rock stand-up routine, you'd understand exactly what Mark is talking about. Because Chris Rock is not only foul-mouthed, he offends everyone on purpose equally, Mark. And to your point, man, that's an excellent article because you can't get away with that stuff anymore at liberal college campi, as Rush says.
Yeah, and George Carlin, who a lot of younger people may not even know of anymore, but George Carlin used to say the same thing and said the same thing to Chris Rock, that he didn't like doing college tours anymore. This was back in 2008 when Carlin actually died that year, but he said the exact same thing about the students being too politically correct. That was 6 years ago. Now it's so out of control that it's sort of a self-parody. The things that college students find offensive now is like a parody of itself. They're pathetic. Our colleges, instead of opening up people's minds, and that used to be what universities existed for, would be to open up students' minds and expose them to new ideas and different cultures and different sorts of education.
Hey, you know what, Mark, just tangentially here, you mentioned Carlin. Hausum teases me all the time about being 127 years old. The first, if you want to call it, concert that I ever attended was George Carlin. And it was he became famous, for those of you who don't know, or at least was elevated by, what was it, the 7 dirty words you can't say on TV. I saw that shtick, and there were, I was at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, and elderly, well, they weren't elderly, adult alumni just aghast, standing up and leaving the theater. So I just had to throw that in there because, but yeah, Carlin was a good example in his time, and Chris Rock is that today.
Well, Carlin was all about free speech, as you know. That was what he renowned for, and the fight against political correctness, which he felt was just generally stupid.
Right.
Now it's, how did he put it? He said it's America's newest form of intolerance. Of course, it's been increasing. It's become increasingly worse over the last years, but it's been underway for decades now. And the result is that you have students who are so close-minded that you wonder what it's going to be like for them when they get out in the real world. There won't be trigger warnings on life, so you just have to wonder what kind of what these students are actually being exposed to in college that's going to help them in the real world.
That's part of the attraction of. Right. It's part of the attraction of getting a second and third postgraduate degree is that you can avoid the microaggressions that make up the real world. In fact, I think Dennis Miller actually had said, Miller was the same way years ago. I've heard him say this on the air, that he hasn't done college campuses for years because people are not funny. They don't find things humorous. and any kind of thing that you point out. I mean, part of what makes comedy work is identification with some sort of either social thing or personal thing. Like, oh gosh, what was it? It was about a month ago. I was on Rick Amato's TV show, and one of the topics was a Chris Rock, and I want to say it was a Saturday Night Live monologue, but maybe it was just somewhere else he was doing it, where he was commenting on the new the towers being open, the new office complex or whatever, the business, the high rise there at the 9/11 site. And Rock was just commenting, they should call this, the building that no one will ever go into. Or should they call it, should Target sponsor it? And people were really offended about that. And that wasn't even a college campus. And he was pointing out that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, comedy, as I mentioned in my article, comedy is really a uniquely powerful way to challenge people's perspectives and to say things that can't be said. And if you have comedians saying that, there's no point in trying to approach people with comedy like that anymore, that they just resist it, that's a bad sign. In terms of the microaggressions that you mentioned, the real world is like one big macroaggression. So if in college you're just focused on, your teacher's microaggression about someone in class, the real world is going to be a very harsh awakening for you. And the real world doesn't have any patience for your politically correct mindset.
Yeah, it does not take your sensitivities and your proclivities for caring, nurturing environment at all. I mean, the world does not care about that even a slight little bit.
Yeah, and to tie it into our previous discussion about the terrorism thing, political correctness is a way of weakening the culture, weakening what's acceptable, weakening what's tolerated, closing minds. It's a way of weakening the culture, and if we live in a culture that's rigidly politically correct, and other cultures like those of our enemies are not, it's not going to end well for us.
Oh my God!
And
in fact, it might just end. We are out of time here. Folks, I want to encourage you. Go to marktapson.com. Both of these articles here, certainly we'll put them on the website. We try to have Mark come on. Obviously, thanks for coming on, brother. You have a great day. And if I don't talk to you, have a great Christmas too, okay?
My pleasure. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, man. See ya.
Thanks, Mark. Same to you, man.
Thanks.
It's funny. My daughter goes to this little private liberal arts college in Montecito outside of Santa Barbara. Incredibly cloistered, obviously. It's up in the hills above Dennis Miller's house in Montecito, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods on the planet. And there was a student-organized protest about police racism. And somebody there on campus pointed out and offended that the protesters didn't pay attention to the racial makeup of people actually protesting. So at this, incredibly expensive private
fun second or last half hour of the show. We'll be right back. Do not go anywhere.
This is your Vigilant Liberty Radio News from Independent Journal Review for Monday, December 22nd. It is not business as usual for officers in New York City today after the shooting deaths of two of their brethren this past weekend. The Patrolmen's Benevolent Association has issued a memo regarding police responses in the city. Quote, starting immediately, at least 2 units are to respond to every call, no matter the condition or severity, no matter what type of job is pending, or what the opinion of the patrol supervisor happens to be. In addition, absolutely no enforcement action in the form of arrests and/or summonses is to be taken